In the summer of 1993, the town of Hamilton, Montana, buzzed with pride. The Hamilton Hawks, the high school's baseball team, had clinched a spot in the state championship in Bozeman. 22 seniors, their bats slung over shoulders, their laughter echoing through the dusty streets, were the town's heroes. For a community of barely 3,000, nestled in the shadow of the Bitterroot Mountains, this was a moment of glory. The team, led by their star pitcher Jake Carver, was a tight-knit group, forged through years of early morning practices, shared victories, and the kind of camaraderie that only a small town could foster. With them were two coaches, Coach Dan Hargrove, a gruff former minor leaguer with a heart of gold, and assistant coach Sarah Tillman, a young teacher who'd grown up in Hamilton, and a driver, a quiet man named Ray Ellison, hired last minute when the regular driver fell ill. On July 10, 1993, they boarded a yellow school bus, waving to families under a blazing summer sun, headed for Bozeman. It was supposed to be their triumph. Instead, it became Hamilton's darkest mystery. The bus never reached Bozeman. By nightfall, when it failed to check in at the team's motel, parents grew uneasy. Phone calls went unanswered. The championship organizers confirmed the Hawks hadn't arrived. By midnight, panic gripped Hamilton. Search and rescue teams fanned out across the highways, scouring Route 93 and the winding back roads through the Bitterroot Valley. Helicopters buzzed overhead, their spotlights slicing through the fog that had rolled in that evening. Dogs sniffed the asphalt, but the scent trails vanished. The forest, vast and impenetrable, seemed to swallow every lead. A week into the search, a volunteer found a baseball bat lying in a ditch off a Forest Service road, its grip tape worn and unmistakable. Jake Carver's initials carved into the handle. But no tire tracks, no wreckage, no sign of the bus. Parents clung to hope, replaying grainy camcorder footage of the team's departure. Jake's cocky grin, outfielder Sam Wheeler's mock salute, catcher Mia Torres flipping her braid as she boarded. The footage ended with the bus pulling away, dust clouding the lens. Days turned to weeks. Strange clues surfaced, each more baffling than the last. A rancher reported hearing a distant engine sputter in the forest the night of the disappearance, but no roads led to where he pointed. Parents received voicemails, static-filled, with faint voices or rustling leaves, but no clear words. One mother, Ellen Carver, Jake's mom, got a call at 2:17 a.m. a week later. A boy's voice whispering, "We're okay," before the line went dead. It sounded like Jake, but the call couldn't be traced. A month later, Coach Hargrove's wife received a letter, no postmark, with 5 scrawled words, "Don't look, we're home now." Handwriting analysis was inconclusive, the letters jagged, as if written under duress. Rumors swirled. Runaways, a prank gone wrong, even alien abductions. But the forest gave no answers. After 2 months, the search was scaled back, the case labeled an unsolved missing persons event. Hamilton mourned, but the families never stopped searching. They walked the trails, posted flyers, and held vigils, lighting 25 candles each July, one for every soul lost. The years crept by. Hamilton High School erected a memorial by the baseball field, a granite slab etched with the names of the 22 players, 2 coaches, and Ray Ellison. The plaque read, "Hawks Forever. Gone but never forgotten." Bedrooms stayed frozen in time, Sam's glove on his dresser, Mia's sketchpad open to a half-finished drawing of the team, Jake's championship trophy gleaming on a shelf. Some parents, like Ellen Carver, refused to declare their children dead, keeping their rooms untouched, their phones active. Others, like Mia's father, Luis Torres, sank into quiet grief, tending the same garden Mia loved, as if her laughter still lingered in the roses. The town whispered of curses, of a forest that took what it wanted. No one spoke of closure. June 12, 2008. A hunter named Caleb Morse, tracking elk deep in the Bitterroot National Forest, stumbled off a faint trail into a ravine so dense with pines and ferns it felt like stepping into another world. At 47, Caleb was no stranger to the Bitterroot's wild heart, but something caught his eye. A glint of faded yellow, half buried under moss and vines. He hacked through the undergrowth, his breath catching as the shape emerged. A school bus, rusted and warped, its frame sinking into the earth. The number 42 was barely legible on its side. The paint chipped and peeling. The windows were cracked, ivy snaking through the gaps like veins. Caleb forced the door open, the hinges screaming. Inside was a tomb, dust-coated torn seats. Backpacks, baseball gloves, and crumpled jerseys lay scattered, some rotting, others eerily preserved. A bat rested against a seat, its grip tape frayed. In the back, under a pile of mildewed clothing, Caleb saw bones. Human bones, later confirmed as 14 sets. A single skull stared from the floor, its jaw missing. Caleb's 911 call brought chaos to Hamilton. Within hours, the ravine was cordoned off. Forensic teams, FBI agents, and local police swarmed the site, their radios crackling under the weight of the discovery. The bus was identified as the one carrying the Hamilton Hawks. Dental records confirmed the remains belonged to 14 of the 22 players, but 8 players, both coaches, and the driver were unaccounted for. The media descended, headlines screaming "Lost Team Found." Montana's darkest mystery reopened. Families gathered at the police station, some sobbing, others demanding answers. The bus's location was impossible. No roads led to the ravine, no tire tracks marked the ground. It hadn't crashed. It had been placed there, hidden by someone or something with intent. Inside the bus, investigators cataloged haunting relics. A catcher's mitt with Mia Torres's name stitched in red. A Polaroid of the team, faded but showing Jake Carver's arm around Sam Wheeler, both grinning. A waterlogged journal, its pages stuck together, belonged to Ethan Brooks, the team's quiet shortstop. The legible entries described the trip's excitement, then grew frantic. Bus stopped. No signal. They're watching us. Scratched into the bus's walls were symbols, spirals, jagged lines, and something like a crude eye, none matching any known language. One seat had a pile of ash, arranged in a perfect circle, as if placed deliberately. The most chilling find was under the driver's seat. A wooden mask, carved with angular patterns, stained with what tests later confirmed was human blood. The discovery shattered Hamilton. For 15 years, the town had clung to theories. Accident, runaway, kidnapping, but the bus told a darker story. The remains showed no signs of a crash. Some bones bore strange marks, not from animals but from precise cuts, suggesting ritualistic intent. The missing 8 players and 3 adults fueled speculation. Had they escaped? Were they taken elsewhere? The symbols and mask pointed to something organized, deliberate. The case was reclassified as a potential mass murder, and the Bitterroot became a crime scene. But the forest, dense and silent, gave no further clues. Search teams found only more questions. A clearing a half-mile away with stones arranged in a spiral, but no footprints, no traces of life. The summer of 2008 burned hotter than Hamilton had seen in years, but the air around the Bitterroot National Forest felt heavy, as if the trees themselves held their breath. The discovery of the school bus, a rusted relic of 1993, sent shockwaves through the town. News vans clogged Main Street, their satellite dishes glinting under the Montana sun. Reporters swarmed the police station, shouting questions about the Hamilton Hawks curse. Families of the missing, now older, grayer, stood vigil outside the cordoned-off forest, clutching faded photos of their children. Ellen Carver, Jake's mother, held a worn baseball cap, her fingers tracing the stitched H as she whispered, "I knew you weren't gone." Others, like Luis Torres, stood in silence, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the Bitterroot's peaks loomed like silent judges. Inside the bus, the investigation unfolded with meticulous dread. Forensic teams worked under floodlights, their hazmat suits glowing ghostly in the dusk. The 14 sets of remains were carefully extracted, each bone catalogued with clinical precision. Some were fully skeletonized, others partially preserved by the forest's damp chill. The marks on the bones, sharp, deliberate cuts, suggested not animal scavenging but something human, intentional. A femur bore a spiral pattern, mirroring the symbols scratched into the bus's walls. The wooden mask, its blood-stained grooves etched with angular lines, was sent to a lab in Missoula. Early tests confirmed the blood was human, typo-positive, matching several of the players, but the mask's wood, blackened, almost petrified, came from no known tree in the Bitterroot. Botanists were baffled. One whispered it looked wrong, like it grew somewhere else. Ethan Brooks's journal became the investigation's focal point. The shortstop, known for his quiet demeanor and sharp eye, had filled pages with neat, slanted handwriting. Early entries captured the team's excitement. Jake's pitching 90 miles per hour. We're gonna crush Bozeman. But the tone shifted after the bus's departure. July 10th. Bus broke down. Middle of nowhere. Coach Hargrove's pissed. Says Ray's useless with engines. No cell signal. Sam keeps joking about Bigfoot, but Mia's scared. Says she saw someone in the trees. The final entry, dated July 11th, was barely legible. Ink smudged as if written in haste. They came at night. Robes. Faces hidden. They know our names. I don't trust Ray. He's with them. The journal ended there, pages torn out, leaving only fragments of charcoal sketches. Crude figures in a circle, their eyes hollow. The symbols carved into the bus. Spirals, jagged lines, and that unblinking eye defied translation. Linguists and anthropologists brought in by the FBI found no match in any known script, though one professor noted their similarity to petroglyphs found in abandoned Montana mines, long predating modern settlement. The ash circle on the seat puzzled investigators. It was too perfect, untouched by the bus's decay, as if placed recently. A Geiger counter, brought to test for environmental anomalies, clicked faintly near the mask, though radiation levels were negligible. The deeper they dug, the less sense it made. The bus's location, a ravine miles from any road, was impossible. No vehicle could navigate the dense forest without leaving a trail. Tire marks were absent, and the undercarriage showed no signs of a crash. It was as if the bus had been dropped from the sky. Hamilton's residents grappled with the news. Some clung to hope, believing the 8 missing players and 3 adults were alive, perhaps hiding or held captive. Others saw the bus as a grave, a final answer to 15 years of pain. At a town hall meeting, Coach Hargrove's widow, Clara, stood trembling, her voice breaking as she demanded, "Why only 14? Where's Dan? Where's my husband?" Theories multiplied. A serial killer? A government cover-up? Even whispers of something older, tied to the Bitterroot's history. Old-timers recalled stories of miners vanishing in the 1800s, their camps found empty, tools scattered. The forest, they said, had always been hungry. The investigation widened. Search teams combed a 2-mile radius, battling the Bitterroot's unforgiving terrain. Steep cliffs, tangled roots, and sudden fogs that disoriented even seasoned rangers. A half-mile from the bus, they found a clearing, its ground unnaturally bare. Stones, smoothed by time, formed a spiral mirroring the bus's carvings. No footprints, no signs of recent activity, yet the air felt thick, oppressive. A ranger swore he heard whispers, faint and unintelligible, but his partner heard nothing. Soil samples showed traces of ash, identical to the bus's circle, but no organic material, no blood, no hair. The FBI called it a dead end, but locals began calling the spot the Hollow, avoiding it even in daylight. On June 20th, 2008, a new shock hit Hamilton. A man walked into the Ravalli County Sheriff's office, his frame gaunt, his face weathered beyond his years. His clothes were tattered. A faded Hawks jersey hung loosely over his skeletal shoulders. His hair, matted and streaked with gray, framed eyes that darted nervously, as if expecting pursuit. "I'm Sam Wheeler," he said, his voice a cracked whisper. "I was on the bus." The room froze. Sam, the team's outfielder, had been 18 in 1993, brash and full of life. Now, at 33, he looked twice his age, his hands trembling as he clutched a water bottle offered by a deputy. Sheriff Laura Gaines, a veteran who'd worked the original case, studied him. "Mr. Wheeler," she said cautiously, "where have you been?" Sam's eyes flicked to the door. "I wasn't supposed to come back," he muttered. "They're still out there. They see everything." His fingerprints, taken on the spot, confirmed his identity. So did a scar on his forearm, a burn from a slide into third base his junior year. But his words were fragmented, his story a jigsaw puzzle with missing pieces. He spoke of the bus breaking down, of figures in robes emerging from the forest, their faces hidden behind wooden masks. "They called themselves the Circle of Shadows," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "They said we were chosen, for the mountain, for the thing that lives in it." Sheriff Laura Gaines leaned forward, her notepad untouched as Sam Wheeler's words filled the interrogation room. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across his hollowed face. Outside, Hamilton's streets were quiet, but inside the sheriff's office, the air was thick with tension. Reporters camped beyond the parking lot, their cameras trained on the building since Sam's arrival. Word of a survivor had spread like wildfire, reigniting the town's obsession with the 1993 disappearance of the Hamilton Hawks. Sam sat hunched, his fingers twisting the frayed hem of his jersey, his eyes avoiding the deputy's gazes. "They're still out there," he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Circle of Shadows. They never stopped watching." "Start from the beginning, Sam," Gaines said, her tone firm but patient. She'd been a rookie deputy in '93, one of the first to search the Bitterroots trails for the missing team. The case had haunted her for 15 years. Every dead end, every tear-streaked parent. Now, a living piece of the puzzle sat before her, but Sam's trembling hands and darting eyes suggested he was as much a mystery as the bus itself. "What happened after the bus broke down?" Sam swallowed, his throat dry. "It was July 10th, he began, his voice unsteady. "We were halfway to Bozeman, cutting through the back roads to avoid traffic. Ray Ellison, the driver, said he knew a shortcut. Coach Hargrove didn't like it, kept saying we were off route, but Ray insisted. Then the engine died. Middle of the forest, no signal, no nothing. We thought we'd wait it out, maybe hike to a ranger station. But then they came." His eyes flicked to the window, as if expecting to see something in the dusk. Figures in robes, gray and tattered, like they'd been living in the dirt. Their faces were covered, masks like the one you found. They didn't speak at first, just stood there, watching. Ray, he wasn't surprised. Like he knew them. Gaines scribbled a note. "Driver involved? Who were they, Sam? What did they want?" "They called themselves the Circle of Shadows," Sam said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "They said the mountain chose us, that it needed us. They took us to a camp, deep in the Bitterroot, somewhere no map could find. Huts made of logs and hides, built around an old mine shaft. They gave us food, water, but it tasted wrong. Bitter. Made us sleepy, foggy. They said we had to let go of our old lives, our names. They called it the binding. Said the mountain was alive, that it demanded blood to keep the world from breaking." The deputies exchanged glances. Gaines kept her face neutral, but her mind raced. A cult, hidden in the Bitterroot for decades, was plausible. Montana had seen its share of off-grid groups. But a living mountain? She pressed on. "What did they do to you, Sam?" "To the team." Sam's hands shook harder. "At first it was just rules. Sleep when they told us, eat what they gave us. They made us carve those symbols, spirals, eyes into our skin sometimes. Mia tried to fight back. She'd sneak drawings, hide them in her shoes. She saw things in her dreams, said the mountain was whispering to her. Jake thought he could talk our way out, use his charm. But they didn't listen. They wanted us to believe." His voice broke. "Then the rituals started. They'd take us to the mine at night, make us stand in a circle around this pit. Black as nothing, deeper than it should have been. They'd chant, burn herbs that made your head spin. One night they took Ethan. He tried to run, left that journal behind. We heard him scream from the pit. Then silence. After that, anyone who resisted, they went next." Gaines's pen paused. Ethan Brooks's journal had mentioned people in the trees, but nothing about a mine. "Why the sacrifices, Sam? What did they think they were doing? Sam's eyes darkened, his voice barely audible. They said the mountain was a guardian older than time. Their ancestors, miners from the 1800s, made a deal with it. Blood for protection. They believed the world outside was dying, that cities, technology were poison. Our blood, young, strong, was supposed to renew the pact, keep the mountain calm. If they didn't feed it, they said it'd wake up, and everything would burn. He leaned forward, his breath ragged. I saw the pit glow once. Red, like it was alive. I don't know if I was drugged or if it was real. The room fell silent. A deputy coughed, breaking the spell. Gaines leaned back, her mind wrestling with Sam's words. Hallucinations from drugs could explain the glowing pit. But the bones, the symbols, the mask, they were real. How did you escape, Sam? She asked. And why now? Why come back after 15 years? Sam's face twisted, fear and guilt warring in his eyes. I ran in 97. For years after they took us. They'd started trusting me, let me chop wood, move supplies. One night, the guards were distracted, some kind of ceremony. I bolted, didn't look back. Kept running till I hit a highway, hitched to Idaho, then further. I stayed quiet, changed my name, worked odd jobs. Thought they'd find me if I talked. But when I heard about the bus on the news, I couldn't hide anymore. I had to tell you. They're still out there, Sheriff. The circle. They never stopped. Gaines studied him. Sam's story was wild, but pieces fit, the journal, the symbols, the ritualistic cuts on the bones. Yet gaps remained. Why only 14 bodies? Where were Jake, Mia, the coaches, and Ray Ellison? And how had the bus been moved to a ravine with no roads? She pressed further. Sam, did anyone else escape? Did you see what happened to the others? He shook his head, his voice trembling. I don't know. After Ethan, they split us up. Some, like Jake, they kept closer to the leaders. Mia, she was different, like they wanted her for something special. I heard whispers about a vessel, but I didn't understand. Coach Hargrove fought them, got beaten bad. I don't know if he's alive. Ray, he was one of them, I'm sure. He drove us straight to their camp. Sam's eyes flicked to the door again. They'll come for me, Sheriff. I broke their rules. They'll know I talked. Before Gaines could respond, a forensic tech burst in, holding a report. Sheriff, we got something from the bus. The tech's voice was tight. A hidden compartment under the floorboards. More carvings, same symbols, and a leather pouch. Inside were teeth. Human teeth. 22 of them. Dental records are still processing, but they don't match the 14 bodies. Gaines's stomach turned. Sam froze, his face paling. They kept them, he whispered. The binding. They said the mountain needed a piece of us all. The investigation spiraled. The teeth, identified as belonging to the 8 missing players, suggested they'd been alive after the initial sacrifices. Their fates unknown. The FBI scoured old mining records, finding references to a 19th century sect in the Bitterroot. Miners who vanished after claiming a spirit in the stone spoke to them. Locals avoided the topic, but one old hunter, interviewed by a reporter, muttered about shadows in the pines that moved without sound. The clearing with the stone spiral was searched again, yielding a single new find. A buried knife, its blade etched with the same I symbol, its handle wrapped in decayed leather. Tests showed blood traces, too degraded to identify. Sam was placed in protective custody, his story dividing Hamilton. Some, like Ellen Carver, believed him, clinging to hope that Jake was alive. Others, like Luis Torres, saw Sam as a liar, his survival proof he'd betrayed the team. Why him? Luis shouted at a town meeting. Why's he here when my Mia's gone? The media feasted, dubbing Sam the Ghost Hawk, spinning tales of cults and curses. Online forums buzzed with theories. The circle was a government experiment, a demonic pact, or a hallucination born of trauma. But Sam never wavered, even as his health deteriorated. His nights plagued by screams only he heard. The Bitterroot National Forest seemed to tighten its grip on Hamilton as the summer of 2008 wore on. The discovery of the school bus and Sam Wheeler's return had torn open old wounds, and the town was a powder keg of grief, suspicion, and fear. The sheriff's office became a fortress, its windows glowing late into the night as investigators pored over evidence that only deepened the mystery. The 14 sets of remains, the carved symbols, the blood-stained mask, and now the pouch of 22 human teeth, each belonging to a missing player, yet 8 of them unaccounted for among the bodies, pointed to something far darker than a simple tragedy. The circle of shadows, as Sam described them, was no longer just a survivor's fevered tale. It was a specter haunting every conversation, every glance into the forest. Sheriff Laura Gaines sat at her desk, surrounded by case files and grainy photos of the bus's interior. The symbols, spirals, jagged lines, that unblinking eye, stared back from evidence bags, their meaning as elusive as the day they were found. The FBI had brought in a cultural anthropologist, Dr. Helen Voss, who traced the symbols to obscure 19th-century mining journals from the Bitterroot Valley. "They're not native," Voss said, her voice low during a briefing. "They resemble markings left by a group of miners who vanished in 1874. They called themselves the Order of the Stone, believed the mountains held a keeper that demanded tribute." She hesitated, glancing at the photos. "The journals mention blood offerings, but it's folklore, not fact." Gaines wasn't so sure. Sam's story of the Circle of Shadows echoed the journals too closely. Robes, rituals, a living mountain. And the knife found in the clearing, its blade etched with the eye symbol, tested positive for blood too old to identify but human beyond doubt. Sam Wheeler remained in protective custody, housed in a safe house on the edge of Hamilton. His health was failing. Pale skin, sunken eyes, hands that shook even at rest. Doctors found no physical cause, only malnutrition and signs of long-term stress. During interviews, he spoke less, his words fragmented. "They're still here," he'd mutter, staring at the walls. "The circle. They know I'm talking." When pressed about the missing 8 players, Jake Carver, Mia Torres, and others, he clammed up, his face twisting with guilt. "I left them," he whispered once. "I should have stayed." Gaines tried to coax more, but Sam's fear was palpable, as if speaking their names would summon something from the pines. A psychiatrist suggested post-traumatic stress, possibly drug-induced delusions from whatever the cult fed him. But the teeth, the mask, the journal, they weren't delusions. The investigation hit wall after wall. The Bitterroot was searched for weeks, drones and dogs combing the ravines, but the forest seemed to defy them. Fog rolled in without warning, compasses spun erratically, and rangers reported an eerie quiet. No birds, no wind, in the hollow, the clearing with the stone spiral. One team found a second site, a half-collapsed mine shaft a mile from the bus, its entrance boarded up but freshly disturbed. Inside, they found ash piles, more carved symbols, and a single baseball cap, its H faded but unmistakable. It belonged to Mia Torres. No bodies, no tracks, just the cap, lying as if placed for someone to find. Lab tests on the ash showed traces of bone, too fragmented for DNA, but the implications were chilling. Gaines ordered the mine sealed, but locals whispered it was already too late. The forest had claimed its own. Hamilton's community fractured under the weight of the case. Town meetings turned into shouting matches. Ellen Carver, Jake's mother, clung to Sam's story, believing her son was alive, perhaps still held by the circle. She spent nights at the library, poring over old maps and mining records, convinced the answers lay in the Bitterroot's history. Luis Torres, Mia's father, rejected Sam outright. "He's lying." Luis spat at a vigil, his voice raw. "My girl wouldn't give up. He knows what happened, and he's hiding it." Others suspected Sam was complicit, maybe even a member of the cult who'd turned on his friends. Graffiti appeared on the safe house walls. "Traitor Hawk." The media fed the frenzy, with headlines like "Survivor" or "Suspect," and talk shows debating whether the circle was real or a cover for something mundane. A serial killer, a drug ring, or a team prank gone horribly wrong. Online, the case exploded. Forums like Reddit buzzed with theories. The circle was a remnant of a Masonic sect, a government experiment gone rogue, or a supernatural force tied to the Bitterroot's geology. One user, claiming to be a former ranger, posted about lights in the pines, seen in the 90s, flickering orbs that vanished when approached. Another shared a grainy photo, allegedly from 1993, showing a robed figure near a Forest Service road, though its authenticity was debated. The teeth became a morbid fascination, with some calling them trophies of a ritual, others a warning. A leaked photo of the mask, its angular carvings glowing under UV light, sparked a wave of amateur sleuths trying to decode its patterns. None succeeded. Sam's story grew stranger with each interview. He described the circle's leaders, a man called Gideon, whose voice cut like a blade, and a woman, unnamed, who led the chants. They lived in the mine, he said, a labyrinth of tunnels where the air felt alive, heavy with whispers. They made us carve our names into the walls, Sam said, his eyes distant. Said the mountain needed to know us. He spoke of Jake being singled out, his leadership seen as a threat, and Mia, whose dreams seemed to guide the cult's rituals. They called her the seer, he said. She saw things they wanted. I don't know what. When asked about Coach Hargrove, Sam's face darkened. He fought them. They took him to the pit. I heard him scream for days. Ray Ellison, the driver, was one of the circle, Sam insisted. He drove us straight to them. He knew the way. In late July 2008, Sam agreed to guide a team to the mine he described. Under heavy guard, he led Gaines and a dozen rangers to a remote ridge in the Bitterroot. The air grew colder as they approached, the forest unnaturally still. Sam pointed to a rocky outcrop, swearing it hid the entrance. But no boards, no shaft, no signs of disturbance were found. They moved it, he stammered, his voice rising. They can do that. The circle, they control the forest. The rangers exchanged looks, some pitying, others skeptical. Gaines noticed Sam's hands shaking, his eyes scanning the trees. On the hike back, a ranger found a fresh carving on a pine, a spiral with an eye, identical to the bus's symbols. No one admitted to seeing it on the way in. By August, Sam's health worsened. He refused food, claiming it tasted like their herbs. Nightmares kept him awake, his screams waking the deputies guarding him. One night, he scratched a spiral into the safehouse wall, muttering, "They're coming." The next morning, he was gone. The door was locked from the inside, the windows intact, but Sam had vanished, leaving only his Hawks jersey, folded neatly on the bed. A note, scrawled in shaky handwriting, read, "I can't stay. The mountain knows." Gaines ordered an immediate search, but the Bitterroot gave nothing. The media erupted, calling it a second disappearance. Some said Sam fled, unable to face the town's accusations. Others whispered he'd been taken by the circle or something worse. Sam Wheeler's disappearance from the safe house in August 2008 sent Hamilton into a tailspin. The locked door, the untouched windows, the folded Hawks jersey with its cryptic note, "I can't stay. The mountain knows," became the town's new obsession. Sheriff Laura Gaines stood in the empty room, her flashlight sweeping over the spiral Sam had scratched into the wall, its jagged lines mirroring the bus's carvings. The search for him was immediate, with rangers, dogs, and drones scouring the Bitterroot National Forest. But the forest, as always, held its secrets. No footprints, no broken branches, no trace of Sam. It was as if the pines had swallowed him whole, just as they had the Hamilton Hawks 15 years earlier. The media spun wild theories. Sam had faked his escape, joined the circle of shadows, or been silenced by a cult still lurking in the shadows. Online forums exploded with speculation, some calling him a victim, others a conspirator. A grainy video surfaced on a conspiracy site, claiming to show a robed figure in the Bitterroot the night Sam vanished, but it was too blurry to verify. The investigation, already stretched thin, unraveled further. The FBI combed through Sam's story, cross-referencing it with the bus's evidence. Ethan Brooks's journal with its frantic final entry, "They know our names. I don't trust Ray," aligned with Sam's claim that the driver, Ray Ellison, was complicit. But Ray's background was a dead end. A drifter with no family, hired through a temp agency, his record sparse even in 1993. The teeth found in the leather pouch haunted investigators, 22 in total, one from each player, yet 8 players, including Jake Carver and Mia Torres, had no bodies in the bus. Were they still alive, held by the circle? Or had they met a worse fate in the mine Sam described? The mine itself remained elusive. Repeated searches of the ridge Sam had pointed to found nothing. No shaft, no boards, just the carved pine with its spiral and eye, which seemed to mock every expedition. The circle of shadows became Hamilton's boogeyman. Dr. Helen Voss, the anthropologist, dug deeper into the 19th century Order of the Stone, uncovering diaries from a miner who claimed the Bitterroot's peaks breathed at night, demanding blood to keep the earth still. The diaries ended abruptly, the miner vanishing in 1874. Locals whispered of similar stories. Hunters lost in the 50s. A logging camp abandoned in the 70s after workers reported eyes in the dark. Gaines dismissed the supernatural talk but couldn't ignore the physical evidence. The ritualistic cuts on the bones, the ash circles, the mask's strange wood. A lab in Seattle analyzed the mask, finding trace minerals not native to Montana, hinting at an origin no one could pinpoint. The knife from the clearing, its blade etched with the eye symbol, tested positive for multiple blood types, suggesting more victims than just the Hawks. Hamilton's families were torn apart by the revelations. Ellen Carver, Jake's mother, became a fixture at the sheriff's office, clutching maps and old mining records, convinced her son was alive, held by the circle as a chosen leader, as Sam had implied. She organized searches, hiking the Bitterroot with volunteers, calling Jake's name until her voice gave out. Luis Torres, Mia's father, rejected Sam's story, believing it a cover for betrayal. "He left my girl to die," Luis told reporters, his eyes red from sleepless nights. He kept Mia's sketchpad, its pages filled with drawings of the team, but one sketch, found after the bus discovery, chilled him. A circle of robed figures around a glowing pit, a girl, Mia herself, standing at its edge, her face blank. Luis refused to show it to anyone, locking it in a drawer as if it could summon the truth. The town's memorial by the baseball field became a shrine. Every July, on the anniversary of the disappearance, families lit 25 candles, one for each lost soul. The granite slab, etched with names, gleamed under moonlight, but the words "Hawks Forever" felt hollow. Some parents, like Coach Hargrove's widow, Clara, stopped attending, unable to bear the weight of unanswered questions. Others, like Ellen, stood vigil alone, whispering prayers to a forest that never answered. Teenagers dared each other to visit the hollow, the clearing with the stone spiral, but none stayed long. They spoke of whispers, of shadows that moved against the wind. A high schooler claimed to find a fresh ash circle in 2009, but when rangers checked, it was gone, the ground undisturbed. In 2010, Sam's story reached a wider audience when a publisher released his memoir, The Mountain's Price, based on his interviews with Gaines before his disappearance. It detailed the circle's rituals, the chants, the mine, the glowing pit, and his escape in 1997, living in fear under a false name until the bus's discovery forced him to come forward. The book was a sensation, climbing bestseller lists, but it polarized readers. Some saw it as truth, a survivor's cry against a hidden evil. Others called it fiction, the ravings of a broken mind. Critics pointed to inconsistencies. Sam's timeline was vague, his descriptions of the mine shifting. Yet the journal, the teeth, the mask lent weight to his words. Online, fans of the book formed groups to search the Bitterroot, posting photos of alleged symbols carved into trees, though most were debunked as natural marks. The case remained open, a wound that refused to heal. By 2012, the FBI scaled back, citing no new leads. Gaines kept a file on her desk, unable to let go. She visited the bus site yearly, now a restricted area overgrown with ferns. The Bitterroot seemed to reclaim it, vines curling tighter each season. In 2015, a hiker reported finding a baseball, scuffed and faded, near the hollow. Its stitching bore the initials JC, Jake Carver. Gaines rushed to the site, but the baseball was gone, the hiker shaken and unwilling to talk. "It's still out there," he muttered before leaving Hamilton for good. On July 10, 2018, the 25th anniversary of the disappearance, Ellen Carver stood alone at the memorial, her hair gray, her hands clutching a worn yearbook. She opened it to the team's photo, their faces frozen in 1993. Jake's grin, Mia's braid, Sam's mock salute. Tucked inside was a note, slipped under her door the night before. No postmark, no signature. It read, in shaky handwriting, "We're still here. The mountain keeps us." Ellen didn't tell anyone, not even Luis. She placed the yearbook at the memorial's base, her fingers lingering on Jake's name. "I'll find you," she whispered, the forest swallowing her words. The Bitterroot National Forest looms over Hamilton, its peaks silent, its secrets buried deep. The circle of shadows, if they exist, remains hidden, perhaps in the mines, perhaps in the shadows of the pines. The 8 missing players, the coaches, and Ray Ellison are neither alive nor dead. Their fate's a question mark etched into the town's soul. Some say Sam's story was a lie, a desperate bid to explain the unexplainable. Others believe the mountain is alive, its hunger unsatisfied. The truth, whatever it is, lies in the Bitterroot, waiting for someone brave or foolish enough to seek it. What do you think? Is the circle of shadows real, or is the forest hiding something even darker? Drop your thoughts below and join the mystery.